8 years of marriage teaches you the small things. I knew Emily hated cilantro, that she slept better with the window cracked, that she hummed off-key when she was happy. I thought that was enough. I thought knowing someone counted as loving them right. "You look nice," I said, adjusting my tie in the hallway mirror. "You always say that." Emily leaned past me to fix her earring, smiling at her reflection instead of mine. "Because it's always true." She laughed, but it was quick, automatic. "Come on, we're going to be late." The company anniversary party was at the Regency downtown, the kind of place with chandeliers that made everyone's voice drop a little, like the room demanded better behavior than we were used to giving. I grabbed us drinks. Emily scanned the crowd the way she always did, restless, like she was waiting for something to happen to her. "Daniel, over here." Sophie waved from near the bar, and I steered us toward her. 8 years and you still bring her to these things," Sophie said, grinning at Emily. "Some men learn. Some men have good taste," I said. Emily's eyes had already drifted past us. "That's when I saw him. Marcus Reed. I didn't know his name yet, only that he walked into a room like he owned the air in it. Tall, dressed simply but expensively, the kind of person who didn't have to try. He was talking to Richard, my boss, laughing at something with his head tilted back. "Who's that?" Emily asked, not really asking me. "No idea," I said. "New investor, maybe." "He's stunning." I laughed it off. "Should I be worried?" "Don't be dramatic." She smiled, but she was already moving. "I'm going to say hello. It's good networking." I watched her cross the room. I told myself that was normal. Emily was social, always had been. She could talk to anyone, make anyone feel important. That was one of the things I loved about her. "Marcus Reed," I heard him say, extending a hand to her. "Emily Carter." She shook it, holding on maybe half a second too long. "You're new here." "Just moved back from London. Figured I'd shake things up." His voice was smooth, practiced, like he'd said the line 100 times and it still worked every time. "London," Emily repeated, and I heard something in her voice I hadn't heard in years. Wonder, maybe, or hunger. "You should hear him talk about it," Sophie muttered beside me. "Guy's been dropping city names all night like breadcrumbs." I laughed, but I kept watching. Emily threw her head back at something Marcus said, and the sound of her laugh reached me across the room, bright and unguarded. I hadn't heard that laugh in a long time. Not the polite one she used at dinner parties. The real one. "You okay?" Sophie asked. "Fine," I said. "Why wouldn't I be?" "No reason." She didn't sound convinced. I watched Marcus lean in to say something only Emily could hear. She covered her mouth, laughing again, swatting his arm lightly like they'd known each other for years instead of minutes. A small, cold thread pulled tight in my chest. I ignored it. She's just having fun, I told myself. It's a party. This is what she does. "Should we mingle?" I asked Sophie, mostly to give myself something to do with my hands. "Sure." She glanced toward Emily and Marcus one more time before following me. 20 minutes later, I found Emily near the coat check, phone in her hand, tucking something into her clutch. "Ready to go?" I asked. "Almost." She smiled at me, but it was a different smile than the one I'd seen across the room. Smaller, practiced. The one she gave me now. "Who were you talking to for so long?" "Marcus, the new investor guy. He's interesting." She said it lightly, like it meant nothing. I saw it then, just for a second, a slip of paper passing from her hand to his before he walked toward the exit. Her number, probably. Networking, I told myself. People exchanged numbers at these things all the time. "Ready?" she asked again, looping her arm through mine like always. "Ready," I said. We walked out together, her hand warm against my arm, and I told myself the tight feeling in my chest was nothing. Just nerves. Just imagination. I was wrong. But that night I didn't know it yet. 3 weeks after the party, Emily started buying new clothes. Not for me. I noticed that first. Dresses that stayed folded in bags in the closet. Never worn on our date nights. Only on the evenings she went out with the girls. "You're staring," she said one morning. catching me watching her put on lipstick she didn't usually wear before work. "Just admiring," I said. "It's a work thing. A presentation." She capped the lipstick without meeting my eyes. "You've had a lot of work things lately. That's what happens when you get promoted, Daniel." Her tone had an edge I wasn't used to. Some of us still have careers to build. I let it go. That was my habit, letting things go. Her phone had become a permanent extension of her hand. Screen always angled away from me, buzzing at hours that didn't match any schedule I recognized. When I asked, she said clients. Deadlines. Nothing. "You look tired," Sophie said at lunch, sliding into the seat across from me. "Been sleeping badly." "Emily?" I hesitated. "She's just busy. Work stuff." "Daniel." Sophie set down her fork. "I've known you 5 years. You get that face when something's wrong and you're trying to talk yourself out of it." "She's distant," I admitted. "Late nights. New clothes. Texts she hides." "That's not nothing. It's probably nothing. Listen to yourself." Sophie leaned forward. "You just described 3 warning signs and called them nothing in the same sentence. I'm not saying panic. I'm saying pay attention. Don't be the guy who explains away everything until it's too late to explain away." Her words sat heavy in my chest for the rest of the day. That weekend, my brother Tom came by to help me fix the fence in the backyard. Tom didn't do subtlety. "You look like hell," he said, handing me a nail. "Thanks." "Emily still running around at all hours?" "She's not running around, Tom. She's busy." "Sure." He hammered a post into place. "You know your problem, Daniel? You've always been passive. In school, at work, with her. You let things happen to you instead of doing something about them. That's not fair. Isn't it? When's the last time you told Emily what you needed? Not what she needed. What you needed." I didn't have an answer. "That's what I thought," Tom said. "Passive guys get left behind, man. Nice guys too, if they don't speak up." That night, I decided to say something. Lightly, carefully, the way I did everything. "Hey," I said, finding Emily on the couch scrolling her phone. "Can we talk?" "About what?" She didn't look up. "You've seemed distant lately. Distracted. I miss you." "I'm right here. You know what I mean." She finally looked at me, and something flickered across her face. Guilt, maybe, or irritation. I couldn't tell which. "Are you seriously doing this right now? Accusing me of something?" "I'm not accusing you of anything. I'm saying I miss my wife. I'm working hard, Daniel. I'm trying to build something for us. And you're sitting here acting paranoid because I bought a new dress." "I didn't say." "You didn't have to." She stood up, phone clutched to her chest. "I'm going to bed." I watched her walk away and told myself I'd overreacted. Maybe Tom was wrong. Maybe Sophie was wrong. Maybe I was the one making cracks where there weren't any. 2 days later, I found the receipt. It was folded small, tucked in the pocket of Emily's coat when I grabbed it by mistake for the dry cleaner. The Wilshire Hotel. One night, 2 weeks ago. A date I remembered clearly, because Emily had told me she was staying late at the office, that I shouldn't wait up. I stood in the hallway holding that piece of paper like it might change if I looked at it long enough. Didn't. "Mommy's going to be late again," I told Grace, tucking her stuffed rabbit under her arm. "But I'm right here." She promised she'd read me the dragon book tonight. Grace's voice wobbled. "She promised, Daddy." "I know, sweetheart. I'll call her." "Okay? Let me try." I stepped into the hallway and called Emily. It rang twice before going to voicemail. I texted instead. "Asterisk Grace is asking for you. Bedtime in an hour. Can you come home?" Asterisk. The reply came 10 minutes later. Asterisk stuck at dinner with a client. Can't leave. Tell her I love her. Asterisk. Something in me didn't believe the word client. I don't know if it was Tom's voice in my head or Sophie's warning or the folded receipt still sitting in my dresser drawer, but I grabbed my keys. "Mrs. Patterson," I said, calling our neighbor. "Any chance you could sit with Grace for an hour?" Something came up. "Of course, Daniel. Everything okay?" "I hope so." I drove to the restaurant Emily had mentioned once, weeks ago, when she said Marcus knew the best places downtown. A gut feeling. I told myself I was wrong the whole way there. I wasn't wrong. Through the window of Rossi's, I saw them. Emily, laughing, wine glass in hand, leaning across the table toward Marcus like the rest of the world had gone quiet around them. He said something, and she covered her mouth, eyes bright. I stood on the sidewalk like a stranger looking into someone else's life. I called her again. I watched her phone light up on the table. She glanced at it, saw my name, and turned it face down without answering. My hands went cold. I texted this time. Asterisk Grace is crying, asking for you. Please come home. Asterisk. I watched her read it. I watched her pick up the phone, type something, and set it back down without calling. Her reply came a second later. Asterisk, she'll be fine with you. This dinner matters, Daniel. Please don't make this a thing. Asterisk. Don't make this a thing. Our daughter was crying for her mother, and I was the one making it a thing. I stood there for another minute, maybe two, watching Marcus refill her glass, watching her laugh at whatever he said next, watching her choose, in real time, right in front of me, to stay. I didn't go in. I don't know what I would have said. I don't know what I would have done with my hands, my voice, the wreckage in my chest. I just turned around and walked back to my car. I sat behind the wheel for a long time before I could make myself drive. When I got home, Grace was on the couch with Mrs. Patterson, eyes red, rabbit clutched to her chest. Is Mommy coming? She asked the second I walked in. Not tonight, baby. I sat beside her, pulling her into my lap. But I'm here. Should we read the dragon book together? It's not the same. I know. My voice cracked just slightly, and I hated that it did. I know it's not the same. I read her the book anyway. Every page, every voice for every character, doing my best impression of dragons and knights while my chest felt like it was caving in. She fell asleep halfway through, thumb near her mouth the way she used to as a baby. I carried her to bed and stood in her doorway for a long time, watching her sleep, thinking about the way Emily had turned her phone face down, thinking about the word client, thinking about how easy it had been for her to choose that table, that laugh, that man, over the sound of her own daughter's voice. Mrs. Patterson touched my arm on her way out. You okay, Daniel? I don't know yet, I said, and I meant it. I sat alone in the kitchen after she left, staring at nothing, running the evening over and over in my mind, searching for a version where I was wrong, where there was some innocent explanation for the turned-down phone and the 2-second glance and the choice she made without hesitating. I didn't find one. Emily came home near midnight, perfume and wine on her breath, humming to herself like the night hadn't cost her anything at all. I didn't say a word. Not yet. But something in me had already changed. I waited until Grace was asleep before I set the hotel receipt on the kitchen table. What is this? Emily asked, though I watched her face change the second she saw it. You tell me. Daniel. The Wilshire Hotel. 2 weeks ago. The night you told me you were staying late at the office. My voice stayed calm, calmer than I felt. And last night, Rossi's, Grace crying for you, and you turned your phone over so you wouldn't have to look at me. She sat down slowly, like her legs had stopped working. You followed me? I called Mrs. Patterson to watch our daughter because I had a feeling, and I was right. So I'm asking you directly, is there someone else? The silence stretched long enough that I already knew the answer before she spoke. Marcus, she said finally, barely above a whisper. It's Marcus. Hearing the name out loud still landed like a blow I hadn't braced for. How long? Since the party. A little after. Weeks, Emily. It's been weeks. I know. Her eyes filled, but I noticed she wasn't looking at me when she cried. She was looking at the table. I didn't mean for it to happen. People don't accidentally end up in hotel rooms. You don't understand what it's like. Her voice cracked, sharper now, less sorry and more defensive. Marcus makes me feel alive, Daniel. Alive. Do you know what that even means anymore? When's the last time you made me feel like that? So this is my fault. I'm not saying it's your fault. I'm saying you're so steady, so predictable, that I forgot what it felt like to be excited about anything. He looks at me like I'm still the girl I used to be before I became just somebody's wife, somebody's mother, somebody's... Don't. My voice finally broke. Don't you dare make this about who I am. Grace was crying for you last night. Crying. And you chose a dinner with him over walking through our front door. That's not fair. None of this is fair. I sat down across from her, hands flat on the table so they wouldn't shake. Does Linda know? Emily's silence answered that question too. She knows, I said, more to myself than to her. She's known this whole time, and she sat across from me at dinner, smiling, saying nothing. She didn't want to get in the middle of it. She's your best friend. My friend too, or so I thought. And she watched me struggle, watched me question myself, and said nothing. That's not her fault, it's mine. I asked her not to say anything, right? Because that makes it better. Emily wiped her eyes, and for a moment I thought maybe an apology was coming. It wasn't. I'm not a bad person, Daniel. I never said you were. You're looking at me like I am. I'm looking at you like someone I don't recognize. I stood up, chair scraping against the floor. You didn't even say sorry. Do you realize that? You explained. You justified. But you never once said the word. She opened her mouth, then closed it again. That's what I thought, I said. I walked upstairs without waiting for whatever she might have said next. I pulled a pillow and blanket from the closet and carried them into the guest room. The one we used for visiting family twice a year. The one that still smelled faintly of fresh paint from when we'd redone it. I sat on the edge of the unfamiliar bed and stared at the wall. I didn't cry. I didn't feel angry, not yet. I felt strangely empty, like something inside me had been scooped out and I hadn't noticed until the room went quiet and I was alone with it. Down the hall, I heard Emily's bedroom door close. I lay back on the guest bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to the house settle around me, and thought about Grace asleep in her room, still believing her parents were the same people they'd been yesterday. She wouldn't believe that much longer. 3 days into sleeping in the guest room, I couldn't stop replaying Emily's words. Asterisk, he makes me feel alive. When's the last time you made me feel like that? Asterisk. I stood in front of the bathroom mirror one morning, staring at myself, trying to find whatever it was she'd stopped seeing. Was I really that boring? I asked the empty house. Nobody answered. That afternoon, Grandma Carter showed up unannounced, the way she always did when she sensed something was wrong. She took one look at my face and set her purse down like she was staying a while. Tom called you, I said. Tom didn't have to. I raised your father. I know that look. She sat at the kitchen table and patted the chair beside her. Sit. Talk. I told her everything. The party, the receipt, Rossi's, the confession, Linda's silence. She listened without interrupting, her hands folded in front of her. She said I was too steady, I said. Too predictable. That being with me made her feel like nothing was ever going to change. And you believed her. I don't know what to believe anymore. Daniel. Grandma's voice sharpened, the way it used to when I was a boy testing the edges of trouble. Let me ask you something. Did you stop being steady because it was wrong? Or because she got bored of it? I didn't answer right away. There's a difference, she said, between a man who's boring and a man who's dependable. She confused the two because she wanted an excuse. Don't you dare confuse them too. So what am I supposed to do? Beg her to see it that way? Absolutely not. She reached over and took my hand. You listen to me. I watched your grandfather chase after a woman who didn't want to be caught for 2 years of our marriage, before he understood something. Begging doesn't bring anyone back. It just shows them how small you're willing to make yourself. Then what does bring someone back? Nothing you do on purpose. And that's not the goal anyway. She squeezed my hand. The goal is building a life so solid it stands whether she's in it or not. You don't fight for her affection, Daniel. That's not a fight you can win, not really, because you can't make someone want you. You fight for yourself. For Grace. For the man you're going to be in 5 years when you look back at this kitchen table. Her words settled into me slowly, like something taking root. I don't even know where to start. Start with what's yours to control. Your work. Your daughter. Your own 2 feet. She stood, smoothing her skirt. And call a lawyer, Daniel. Quietly, not out of spite, out of readiness. A woman who chooses a dinner over her own child's bedtime story isn't done making choices that hurt this family. Protect Grace. Protect yourself. I walked her to the door, and she paused before leaving. You are not what she said you are, she told me, gripping my arm. Steady is not a weakness. It's the very thing she's going to miss most, once the excitement wears thin. But that's her problem to live with, not yours to fix. After she left, I sat back down at the table, and for the first time in days, the fog in my head began to clear. I opened my laptop and searched for family lawyers in the area. I made a list of our joint accounts. I thought about Grace's school schedule, her therapist's number, the apartment listings near her school that I'd need if it came to that. I wasn't doing it out of anger. I wasn't doing it to punish Emily. I was doing it because for the first time since the party, I had a plan that didn't depend on her at all. That felt like the first real breath I'd taken in weeks. A week after Grandma's visit, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. Daniel Carter? Speaking. My name is Nathan Price. I used to be Marcus Reed's business partner. I think we should talk. I nearly hung up. Then something in his tone made me stay on the line. I heard about your wife, Nathan said. Word travels fast in small circles. I'm not calling to make things worse. I'm calling because I think you should know who you're dealing with. I'm listening. Marcus has done this before. 3 times that I know of. Married women. Always the exciting stranger who swoops in and makes them feel like their old life was too small. He chases hard until he wins. Then he loses interest the second it stops being a game. My stomach tightened, but my voice stayed even. Why are you telling me this? Because he did it to my sister's marriage 2 years ago. Cost her everything. Her husband, her kids' trust, her home. Marcus walked away without a scratch. I watched it happen and said nothing. I'm not staying quiet this time. What happened to your partnership? I found out he was using company funds to pay for hotel rooms he wrote off as client dinners. I confronted him. He smiled the whole time like it didn't matter. That's who he is, Mr. Carter. Charming until it's inconvenient. Then gone. I sat with that for a long moment. Thank you for telling me. I'm sorry it's not better news. It's not news, really, I said. It's just confirmation of something I already suspected. After I hung up, I didn't feel angry. I felt strangely calm, like a puzzle piece had finally clicked into place. I didn't call Emily to throw it in her face. I didn't need to win an argument or prove a point. Nathan's call wasn't ammunition. It was just the truth, arriving late but arriving anyway. I noticed the change in Emily before she said a word about it. She'd stopped smiling at her phone. Her makeup, once so careful before every work dinner, had gotten sloppy, rushed. One evening I heard her arguing quietly in the bathroom. Phone pressed to her ear. You said you'd call me back. Her voice, thin and pleading, drifted through the door. Marcus, I just want to talk. It doesn't have to be a big thing. We can just... Silence. Then softer, fine. Whatever. She came out with red-rimmed eyes and caught me standing in the hallway. Were you listening? I was walking by, I said. But since you brought it up, is everything okay with Marcus? Don't, she snapped. Don't you dare act concerned. I'm not acting concerned about your relationship with him, Emily. I stopped being concerned about that a while ago. I kept my voice level. I'm just noticing you don't seem as alive as you used to. She flinched at her own word thrown back at her. He's just busy, she said, though it sounded like she was trying to convince herself more than me. It's a stressful time for him. Work stuff. Sure, I said. Don't look at me like that. Like what? Like you already know how this ends. I didn't answer because she was right. I did know. Nathan had told me exactly how this ended. And watching her stand there, phone clutched too tight, eyes searching mine for reassurance I no longer had to give, I understood something I hadn't fully grasped until that moment. Marcus wasn't the storm that destroyed my marriage. He was just the mirror that showed Emily what she thought she was missing. And now that the thrill of secrecy was gone, now that the chase was over, he was already looking past her toward whatever came next. She just hadn't realized it yet. I walked back to the guest room and closed the door, leaving her standing alone in the hallway with a phone that wasn't going to ring. I placed the folder on the kitchen table on a Tuesday evening, after Grace was asleep. "What's this?" Emily asked, though her face told me she already suspected. "Separation papers. I filed this morning." She stared at the folder like it might rearrange itself into something less real. "You're serious?" "I am." "Just like that? No fight, no yelling, no?" She gestured vaguely, searching for the word. "Nothing? What would yelling accomplish, Emily?" "I don't know. Something. Anything. This is worse than if you screamed at me." "I'm not interested in screaming. I'm interested in Grace having two parents who can be in the same room without pretending something isn't broken." I kept my voice steady, the way Grandma had taught me without ever saying so directly. "This isn't a punishment. It's just where things are." "You've changed," she said quietly. "Probably. I don't know what to do with this version of you." "You don't have to do anything with him," I said. "He's not for you anymore." She opened the folder, hands trembling slightly as she flipped through the pages, and for the first time since the confession, I saw real fear in her eyes instead of guilt or defensiveness. Calm unsettled her more than anger ever could have. Anger she knew how to argue with. Calm gave her nothing to push against. At work the next week, Richard called me into his office. "Sit down, Daniel." He gestured to the chair across from his desk. "I've been watching you these past few weeks. Something's different." "Been a rough patch at home," I admitted, trying to channel it somewhere useful. "Well, it's working. The Hendricks account, the numbers you pulled together for the board meeting. Sharpest work I've seen from you in years." He slid a folder across the desk. "I'm promoting you to senior account manager, effective next month." I stared at the folder, something loosening in my chest that had been tight for weeks. "Thank you, Richard. I won't let you down." "You already haven't." Sophie caught me in the hallway afterward, grinning before I even said anything. "I heard. News travels fast. This is a small office." She leaned against the wall. "I'm proud of you, Daniel. Genuinely. I couldn't have gotten through the last month without someone telling me straight when I was making excuses for things I shouldn't have been making excuses for. That's just called being a decent friend. Still, thank you. Buy me a coffee sometime and we'll call it even." She smiled, easy and warm, no expectation behind it, and I realized how much I'd started to rely on that steadiness without meaning to. Not romance. Not yet, maybe not ever. Just proof, quiet and constant, that I wasn't as easy to overlook as Emily had made me feel. That evening, I came home to find Emily sitting at the kitchen table, watching me set my keys down with an expression I didn't recognize on her. Something between longing and confusion. "You got a promotion," she said. "I heard from Linda, who heard from Sophie's roommate. Small world." "I did. You seem different lately. Lighter, almost." "I feel different." "Is it because of the separation?" "It's because I stopped waiting for someone else to decide who I get to be." I grabbed a glass of water, leaning against the counter. "I stopped being passive, like Tom said. I started building something instead of just hoping things would fix themselves." "I don't know how to compete with that version of you," she said, almost to herself. "You're not supposed to compete with it, Emily. You're supposed to have wanted it all along." She didn't have an answer for that. I left her sitting at the table and went upstairs to check on Grace, feeling for the first time in a long while like the ground under my feet was solid, and mine, regardless of what Emily decided to do with hers. Emily showed up at my new apartment on a Thursday evening, eyes swollen, mascara smudged like she'd been crying in her car before working up the nerve to knock. "Can we talk?" she asked. "Grace is with Mrs. Patterson for another hour," I said. "You have that long?" She stepped inside, glancing around at the half-unpacked boxes, the mismatched furniture I'd picked up from a second-hand shop. "It's small. It's mine," I said. "What did you want to talk about?" "Marcus." Her voice cracked on the name. He stopped answering my calls 3 days ago. I went to his office. His assistant said he was in a meeting. I waited 2 hours. He never came out the front. I'm sorry that happened to you. Are you? She looked up sharply. Or are you just saying that? I'm not going to pretend I'm happy you're hurting, Emily. I'm also not going to pretend I'm surprised. You knew this would happen? Nathan Price called me weeks ago. Marcus's old business partner. Told me this is what he does. Chases until he wins. Then disappears once it stops being exciting. I kept my voice even. I didn't tell you because it wasn't my place to save you from a choice you already made. She sat down hard on my second-hand couch, hands covering her face. I gave up everything for him. My marriage, my family, and her voice broke. He just discarded me like I was nothing. I'm sorry, I said again, and I meant it, even if it wasn't the apology she wanted. Daniel. She looked up, eyes desperate now. I made a mistake. A huge, terrible mistake. I know that now. I want to come home. I want us to try again. For Grace. For everything we built. I sat down across from her, giving myself a moment before answering. There was a version of me, I said slowly, who would have said yes to that in a heartbeat. Who would have told himself that loving you meant taking whatever you were willing to give, even the leftover pieces after someone else got the best of you. Daniel. Let me finish. I held up a hand, gentle but firm. That version of me spent 8 years believing that steady meant invisible. That being dependable meant I didn't get to ask for anything back. Grandma helped me see that wasn't strength. It was fear wearing a nice suit. I know I hurt you. You didn't just hurt me, Emily. You chose him over our daughter's bedtime. You let me find out through a hotel receipt. You told our friend to keep quiet while I questioned my own sanity for weeks. My voice stayed calm, but every word landed with weight. And now that he's gone, you're back here asking for the man who would have taken you back without a single condition. So what are you saying? I'm saying that man doesn't exist anymore. I built someone else in his place these past few months. Someone who knows his worth doesn't depend on whether you choose him. Tears rolled freely down her face now. So there's no chance? Nothing I can do. This isn't a punishment, Emily. I'm not trying to make you suffer. I stood, walking to the door and opening it gently. I just finally understand that loving someone doesn't mean disappearing for them. I spent 8 years disappearing. I'm done. She stood slowly, gathering her purse, pausing at the threshold. I really am sorry. I believe you, I said. I just needed to hear it a long time ago, before it cost us everything. She walked out into the evening without another word. I closed the door behind her, leaned my back against it, and felt something I hadn't expected. Not triumph, not relief exactly, just quiet, solid peace, the kind that comes from finally choosing yourself. Daddy, watch this. Grace spun in circles in the middle of my living room, arms out, until she stumbled and collapsed into a fit of giggles on the rug. Very impressive, I said, setting down the pizza box on the coffee table. 10 out of 10 spinning. Can we do movie night? You promised. I did promise. I glanced at the clock. 6 months since I'd signed the papers. 6 months since the guest room, the receipt, the quiet unraveling of everything I thought my life was supposed to look like. Pick the movie. I'll get the blankets. She scrambled toward the small shelf of DVDs I'd bought for this apartment. This new life, humming to herself the way she always did when she was happy. The sound eased something in my chest every time I heard it. Sophie called while Grace was picking, her voice bright through the phone. Just checking in. How's the new promotion treating you? Busy. Good busy, though. And Grace? Doing great. Better than I expected, honestly. Kids adjust faster than we give them credit for. And you? I thought about the question longer than I meant to. I think I'm doing okay, Sophie. Genuinely. Good. That's all I wanted to hear. A pause. Coffee this week? My treat this time. I'd like that. I hung up smiling. Something I hadn't expected 6 months ago, when I was staring at hotel receipts and rehearsing conversations I didn't want to have. I'd heard through Linda, indirectly, that Emily had moved into a small apartment across town, that Marcus had resurfaced briefly with another woman at a gallery opening, laughing the same easy laugh he'd used on Emily at that party. I felt nothing when I heard it. Not satisfaction, not anger. Just a quiet acknowledgement that people who chase excitement instead of building something real usually end up alone with the wreckage of what they left behind. I didn't need to destroy Marcus. I didn't need Emily to suffer for me to feel whole again. Their choices had already set that unraveling in motion long before I ever stopped waiting for either of them to fix it. I picked the Dragon movie, Grace announced, holding up the case triumphantly. Good choice. I settled onto the couch, and she climbed up beside me, pulling the blanket over both of us. Daddy. Yeah. Sweetheart. Are you happy? In the new apartment, I mean. I looked down at her, this small person who'd somehow found her footing faster than I had, who laughed freely now in a way she hadn't during those tense final months in our old house. I am, I said, and I meant it completely. Are you? I like it here. It's smaller, but it feels. She searched for the word, the way 7-year-olds do when a feeling is bigger than their vocabulary. Calmer. Calmer, I repeated. Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. She rested her head against my arm as the movie started, and I sat there in the glow of the television, thinking about how differently I'd pictured this moment a year ago. I'd imagined losing Emily as the worst thing that could happen to me. I'd built my whole sense of worth around being needed by her, around being steady enough, patient enough, good enough to keep her from leaving. I hadn't understood, back then, that a person can't build their worth on someone else's willingness to stay. Grandma had been right, the way she usually was. Real strength wasn't begging someone to choose you. It was building something solid enough to stand on your own, so solid that whether someone chose to stand there with you became a question about them, not about you. I glanced down at Grace, already half asleep against my shoulder, rabbit tucked under one arm, breathing slow and even. Losing Emily hadn't been the tragedy I'd feared. It would be that night outside Rossi's, watching her turn her phone face down. It had been the beginning of something else entirely, the slow, quiet work of finding out who I was when I stopped shrinking myself to fit into someone else's idea of exciting. I thought about Sophie's easy laugh, about Richard's promotion, about Tom's blunt honesty finally landing somewhere useful, about Grandma's hand gripping mine at the kitchen table. I thought about every small choice that had built this life, brick by brick, without Emily anywhere in the blueprint. I turned off the television once the movie ended and carried Grace to bed, tucking the blanket around her shoulders the way I had every night since we moved in. Love you, Daddy, she mumbled, already half dreaming. Love you too, baby. I stood in her doorway for a long moment, the way I had that night after Rossi's, except everything about the silence felt different now. Not heavy, not waiting for something to break, just peaceful. I walked back to the living room, sat down in the quiet, and let myself simply exist there for a while. No one to please, no one to convince, nothing to prove. I finally understood what Grandma meant. Love was never supposed to cost you yourself. And for the first time in longer than I could remember, I wasn't the man waiting to be chosen. I was just a man who'd already chosen himself.